Late. All right. Shit. Thank you. All right. Sorry for this. I just had to take my dog for a walk. I'm going to move this over here. All right. Let's try this. Oh, it works. There we go. Just some nice little flowers in the background. Just woke up and took my dog walking. So let's see if this works. So I want to read the Bhagavad Gita in parts. And the reason why I want to do this is the last story I read of Arjun was from a book called Vasistha's Yoga, which is basically as hardcore into the Vedic philosophy as I've gotten so far, and I've got a couple books that are even harder core into it that I'm going into next. But the Bhagavad Gita is easier to read by itself without all the extra things going on behind it. And I guess the story is, if I've told this before, I don't know if I said it again, but online. But in 2011, when I got out of the military, I was going to the University of Montana, and I was given the Bhagavad Gita by a Hare Krishna after I yelled at a man who was preaching brimstone and fire in the freedom of speech corridor at the university. And from there, I didn't read it. Came up to me and was like, "You need this. I'm going to give this to you," which has happened a couple of times, actually. There must be something about me that I need help. But so I didn't read this until this last December when I was going through my books and I was looking at it, and the Bhagavad Gita just kept coming up. And I kind of really wish that I would have read it back when I first got it, but I also know that I wasn't really in the place to hear it. So I was angry, disgusted with myself. Well, I mean, maybe that is the perfect place to hear this type of stuff. But anyways, when I read it, a lot of my own personal issues, questions kind of stilled, especially when it came to duty and the self. Something that, of course, I've been struggling with for a while now. But the preface of the Bhagavad Gita goes like this. The Bhagavad Gita, the greatest devotional book of Hinduism, has long been recognized as one of the world's spiritual classics and a guide to all on the path of truth. It is sometimes known as the Song of the Lord or the Gospel of the Lord Sri Krishna. According to the Western scholarship, it was composed later than the Vedas and the Upanishads, probably between the 5th and 2nd centuries before Christ. It is a fragment, part of the sixth book of the epic poem, the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata tells of the Pandavas, Prince Arjun and his four brothers, growing up in North India in the court of their uncle, the blind king Dhritarashtra, after the death of their father, the previous ruler. There is always great rivalry between the Pandavas, or sons of Pandu, and the Kauravas, or the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra. Eventually, the old king gives his nephews some land of their own, but his eldest son, Duryodhana, defeats Yudhishthira, the eldest Pandava, by cheating at dice and forces him and his brothers to surrender their land and go into exile for 13 years. On the return, the old king is unable to persuade his son, Duryodhana, to restore the heritage, and in spite of efforts of reconciliation by Sanjaya, Dhritarashtra's charioteer, and by Bhishma, the wise counselor, and even by the Lord Krishna himself, war cannot be averted. The rival hosts face each other on the field of Kurukshetra. It is at this point that the Bhagavad Gita begins. When Prince Arjun surveys the battlefield, he is overwhelmed with sorrow at the futility of war. The teachings of the Bhagavad Gita are spoken by the divine Lord Krishna, who is acting as the prince's charioteer. They are overheard by Sanjaya and reported back to King Dhritarashtra. When Krishna has finished speaking to Arjun, the two armies engage. The battle lasts 18 days, and by the end of it, nearly all the warriors on both sides are dead, save Krishna and the 5 sons of Pandu. Chapter 1. The Despondency of Arjun. The king Dhritarashtra asked, O Sanjaya, what happened on the sacred battlefield of Kurukshetra when my people gathered against the Pandavas? Sanjaya replied, Prince Duryodhana, when he saw the army of the Pandavas paraded, approached his preceptor Guru Drona and spoke as follows. Revered follow, behold this mighty host of the Pandavas paraded by the son of King Drupada, thy wise disciple. In it are heroes and great bowmen, the equals in battle of Arjun and Bhima. I'm just going to actually skip all these names because I've had trouble with them. Then, to enliven his spirits, the brave grandfather Bhishma, eldest of the Kuru clan, blew his conch till it sounded like a lion's roar, and immediately all the conches and drums, the trumpets and horns blared forth in tumultuous uproar. Then, seated in their spacious war chariot, yoked with white horses, Lord Sri Krishna and Arjun sounded their divine shells. Lord Sri Krishna blew his Panchajanya, and Arjun his Devadatta. Brave Bhima, his renowned shell, Poundra. The king Dharmaja, the son of Kunti, blew Anantavija, Kakalu, and Sandeho, the Shugash, and Manipushupaka, respectively. And the Maharaja of Benares, the great archer, Shikandi, the great soldier, Jishchayama, Bharata, and Sakaya, the invincible. Actually, let's go to the 2. All right. Raising his bow, spoke this to the Lord Sri Krishna, Arjun. O infallible Lord of the earth, please draw up my chariot betwixt the two armies, so that I may observe those who must fight on my side, those who must fight against me, and gaze over this array of soldiers, eager to please the sinful sons of Dhritarashtra. Sanjaya said, having listened to the request of Arjun, Lord Sri Krishna drew up his bright chariot exactly in the midst between the two armies. Whether Bhishma or Drona had led all the rulers of the earth and spoke, whether Bhishma and Drona had led all the rulers of the earth and spoke thus, O Arjun, behold these members of the family of Kuru assembled. There Arjuna noticed fathers, grandfathers, uncles, cousins, sons, grandsons, teachers, and friends, fathers-in-law and benefactors arrayed on both sides. Arjuna then gazed at all those kinsmen before him, and his heart melted with pity, and sadly he spoke. Oh, my lord, when I see all these my own people thirsting for battle, my limbs fail me and my throat is parched. My body trembles and my hair stands on end. The bow Gandeva slips from my hand and my skin burns. I cannot keep quiet, for my mind is in tumult. The omens are adverse. What good can come from the slaughter of my people on this battlefield? Oh, my lord, I crave not for victory, nor for the kingdom, nor for any pleasure. What were a kingdom or happiness or life to me, when those for whose sake I desire these things stand here about to sacrifice their property and their lives? Teachers, fathers and grandfathers, sons and grandsons, uncles, fathers-in-law, brothers-in-law, and other relatives. I would not kill them even for the three worlds. Why then for this poor earth? It matters not if I myself am killed. My lord, what happiness can come from death of these sons of Dhritarashtra? We shall sin if we kill these desperate men. We are worthy of a nobler fate than to slaughter our relatives, the sons of Dhritarashtra. For, my lord, how can we be happy if we kill our kinsmen? Although these men, blinded by greed, see no guilt in destroying their kin or fighting against their friends. Should not we, whose eyes are open, who consider it to be wrong to annihilate our house, turn away from so great a crime? The destruction of our kindred means the destruction of the traitors of our ancient lineage, and when these are lost, irreligion will overrun our homes. When irreligion spreads, the women of the house begin to stray. When they lose their purity, adulteration of the stock follows. Promiscuity ruins both the family and those who defile it, while the souls of our ancestors droop through lack of the funeral cakes and ablution. By the destruction of our lineage and the pollution of blood, ancient class traditions and family purity alike perish. The wise say, my lord, that they are forever lost, whose ancient traditions are lost. Alas, it is strange that we should be willing to kill our own countrymen and commit a great sin in order to enjoy the pleasures of a kingdom. If, on the contrary, the sons of Dhritarashtra, with weapons in their hands, should slay me, unarmed and unresisting, surely that would be better for my welfare. Sanjaya said, having spoken thus in the midst of the armies, Arjun sank on the seat of the chariot, casting away his bow and arrow, heartbroken with grief. Thus, in the holy book of the Bhagavad Gita, one of the Upanishads, in the science of the Supreme Spirit, in the art of self-knowledge, in the colloquy between the Divine Lord Sri Krishna and the Prince Arjun, stands the first chapter entitled The Despondency of Arjuna. In chapter 2, the philosophy of discrimination. Actually, before we get into chapter 2, that's the despondency of Arjun. I kind of felt for a while like, why are we fighting? And I'm not a king. I was just a soldier. I was just a foot soldier. So, like, basically, a chair soldier. But I still was looking at these people that we were hunting every single day and wondering why. I was being told to hate these people, and when I left the military and I was keeping track of what was happening in the drone program outside of the drones through social media and all that type of stuff, I was hoping to see a greater picture, a greater purpose, but all I saw was death. All I saw was we were getting nowhere. Children were dying. I mean, I fucking killed a child. I'm no better. But still, I mean, life is what it is, and the experiences that we have are there for a reason. And wisdom is there to help us with the things that we struggle against. And I definitely understand Arjun's despondency at wanting to fight, because even this whole whistleblower bullshit, I've not really wanted to do it. I feel like I've been taken advantage. My word has been taken advantage of. I gave my word to people that I would tell them what was going on and the truth behind things. And it seems like I feel like I'm the only one that actually got shit fucking accomplished. Within my limited sphere of influence, I'm the only one that actually fucking did my shit. but I'm also not a whistleblower. I don't feel, and I feel like Julian and Edward Snowden and all of them are much better people than me. They, especially this woman, Reality Winter. If you want to know someone who's done their duty, it's these three people. And Manning did their duty as well. And the difference between me and them and Drake, and I murdered people. And I didn't enjoy it. I didn't want to do it, but I did it anyway. And I will pay for that if I've not paid for it already. Or whatever. It is what it is. So let's continue with this. The philosophy of discrimination. Sanjaya then told the Lord Sri Krishna, seeing Arjuna overwhelmed with compassion, his eyes diminished with flowing tears and full of despondency, consoled him. The Lord said, "My beloved friend, why yield just on the eve of battle to this weakness, which does no credit to those who call themselves Aryans, and only brings an infamy and bars them against the gates of heaven? O Arjun, why give way to unmanliness? O thou who art the terror of thine enemies, shake off such shameful effeminacy and get ready to act." Arjuna argued, "My lord, how can I, when the battle rages, and send an arrow through Bhishma or Drona, who should receive my reverence? Rather, I would content myself with a beggar's crust than kill these teachers of mine, these precious noble souls. To slay these masters who are my benefactors would be to stain the sweetness of life's pleasures with their blood. Nor can I say whether it were better that they conquer me, for me to conquer them, since I would no longer care to live if I killed these sons of Dhritarashtra, now preparing for fight. My heart is oppressed with pity, and my mind confused as to what my duty is. Therefore, my lord, tell me what is best for my spiritual welfare, for I am thy disciple. Please direct me, I pray. For I should attain the monarchy of the visible world over the invisible world. It would not drive away the anguish which is now paralyzing my senses." Sanjaya continued, "Arjuna, the conqueror of all enemies, then told the Lord of all hearts that he would not fight, and became silent, O king. Thereupon the Lord, with a gracious smile, addressed him who was so depressed in the midst of the two armies. Lord Sri Krishna said, "Why grieve for those for whom no grief is due, and yet profess wisdom? The wise grieve neither for the dead nor the living. There was never a time when I was not, nor thou, nor these princes were not. There will never be a time when we shall cease to be. As the soul experiences body, infancy, youth, and old age, so finally it passes into another. The wise have no delusion about this. Those external relations which bring cold and heat, pain and happiness, they come and go. They are not permanent. Endure them bravely, O prince. The hero whose soul is unmoved by circumstance, who accepts pleasure and pain with equanimity, only he is fit for immortality. That which is not shall never be. That which is shall never cease to be. To the wise, these truths are self-evident. The spirit which pervades all that we see is imperishable. Nothing can destroy the spirit. The material bodies which is this eternal, indestructible, immeasurable spirit inhabits are all finite. Therefore, fight, O valiant man. He who thinks that the spirit kills and he who thinks of it as killed are both ignorant. The spirit kills not, nor is it killed. It was not born, it will never die, nor once having been can it cease to be. Unborn, eternal, ever enduring, yet most ancient, the spirit dies not when the body is dead. He who knows the spirit is indestructible, immortal, unborn, always the same. How should he kill or cause to be killed? As a man discards his threadbare robes and puts on new, so the spirit throws off its worn-out bodies and takes fresh ones. Weapons cleave, it doesn't it not. Let weapons cleave it not. Fire burns it not. Water drenches it not, and wind dries it not. It is impenetrable. It can be neither drowned, nor scorched, nor dried. It is eternal, all-pervading, unchanging, immovable, and most ancient. It is named the unmanifest, the unthinkable, the immutable. Wherefore, knowing the spirit as such, thou hast no cause to grieve. Even if thou thinkest of it as constantly being born, constantly dying, even then, O mighty man, thou still hast no cause to grieve. For death is as sure as that which is born, as birth is for that which is dead. Therefore, grieve not for that which is inevitable. The end and the beginning of beings are unknown. We see only the intervening formations, then what cause is therefore for grief? One hears of the spirit with surprise, another thinks it marvelous, the third listens without comprehending. Thus, though many are told about it, scarcely is there one who knows it. Be not anxious about these armies. The spirit of man is imperishable. Thou must look at thy duty. Nothing can be more welcome to a soldier than a righteous war. Therefore, to waver in this resolve is unworthy, O Arjun. Blessed are the soldiers who find their opportunity. This opportunity has opened for thee the gates of heaven. Refuse to fight in this righteous cause, and thou wilt be a traitor, lost to fame, incurring only sin. Men will talk forever of thy disgrace, and to the noble, dishonor is worse than death. Great generals will think that thou hast fled the battlefield through cowardice, though, once honored, thou wilt seem despicable. Thine enemies will spread scandal and mock at thy courage. Can anything be more humiliating? If killed, thou shalt attain heaven. If victorious, enjoy the kingdom of earth. Therefore, arise, O son of Kunti, and fight. Look upon pleasure and pain, victory and defeat, with equal eye. Make ready for combat, and thou shalt commit no sin. I have told thee of the philosophy of knowledge. Now listen, and I will explain the philosophy of action, which by means of which, O Arjun, thou shalt break through the bondage of all action. On this path, endeavor is never wasted, nor can it ever be repressed. Even a little of its practice protects one from great danger. By its means, the straying intellect becomes studied in the contemplation of one object only, whereas the minds of irresolute stray into bypaths innumerable. Only the ignorant speak in figurative language. It is they who extol the letter of the scripture, saying, there is nothing deeper than this. Consulting only their own desires, they construct their own heaven, devising arduous and complex rites to secure their own pleasure and their own power, and the only result is rebirth. While the minds are absorbed with ideas of power and personal enjoyment, they cannot concentrate their discrimination on one point. The Vedic scriptures tell of the three constitutes of life, the qualities. The qualities. Rise above all of them, O Arjun, above all the pairs of opposite sensations. Be steady in truth, free from world anxieties, centered in the self. As a man can drink water from any side of a full tank, so the skilled theologian can wrest from any scripture that which will serve his purpose. But thou hast only the right to work, but none of the fruit thereof. Let not then the fruit of thine action be thy motive, nor yet be thou enamored of inaction. Perform all thy actions with mind concentrated on the divine, renouncing attachment and looking upon success and failure with an equal eye. Spirituality implies equanimity. Physical action is far inferior to an intellect concentrated on the divine. Having recourse then to pure intelligence, it is only the petty-minded who work for reward. When a man attains to pure reason, he renounces this world, the results of good and evil alike. Cling thou to right action. Spirituality is the real art of living. The sages, guided by pure intellect, renounce the fruit of action, and freed from the chains of rebirth, they reach the highest bliss. When thy reason has crossed the entanglements of illusion, then thou shalt become indifferent both to the philosophies thou hast heard and to those thou mayest yet hear. When the intellect, bewildered by the multiplicity of holy scripts, stands unperturbed in blissful contemplation of the infinite, then hast thou attained spirituality. Arjun asked, my lord, how can we recognize the saint who has attained pure intellect, who has reached the state of bliss, and whose mind is steady? How does he talk? How does he live? And how does he act? Lord Shri Krishna replied, when a man has given up the desires of his heart and is satisfied with the self alone, be sure that he has reached the highest state. The sage whose mind is unruffled in suffering, whose desire is not roused by enjoyment, who is without attachment, anger, or fear, take him to be one who stands at lofty level. He who wherever he goes is attached to no person and to no place by ties of flesh, who accepts good and evil alike, neither welcoming the one nor shirking of the other, take him to be one who is merged with the infinite. He who can withdraw his senses from the attachment of their objects as the tortoise draws his limbs within its shell, Take it as that such a one has attained perfection. The objects of sense turn from him who is abstemious. Even the relish for them is lost in him who has seen the truth. O Arjun, the mind of him who is trying to conquer it is forcibly carried away in spite of his efforts by his tumultuous senses. Restraining them all, let him meditate steadfastly on me, for who thus conquers his senses achieves perfection. When a man dwells on the objects of senses, he creates an attraction for them. Attraction develops into desire, and desire breeds anger. Anger induces delusion. Delusion, loss of memory. Through loss of memory, reason is shattered, and loss of reason leads to destruction. But the self-controlled soul who moves amongst sense objects, free from either attachment or repulsion, he wins eternal peace. Having attained peace, he becomes free from misery. For when the mind gains peace, right discrimination follows. Right discrimination is not for him who cannot concentrate. Without concentration, there cannot be meditation. He who cannot meditate must not expect peace, and without peace, how can anyone expect happiness? As a ship is at sea is tossed by the tempest, so the reason carried away by the mind, preyed upon by the straying senses. Therefore, O might in arms, he who keeps his senses detached from their objects, take it that his reason is purified. The saint is awake when the world sleeps, and he ignores that for which the world lives. He attains peace, into whom desire flow as rivers into the ocean, which through brimming with water remains ever the same, not he who desires, whom desire carries away. He attains peace, who, giving up desire, moves through the world without aspiration, possessing nothing which he can call his own, and free from pride. O Arjun, this is the state of the self, the supreme spirit, to which if a man once attained, it shall never be taken from him. Even at the time of leaving the body, he will remain firmly enthroned there and will become one with the eternal. Thus, in the holy book of the Bhagavad Gita, one of the Upanishads, in the science of the Supreme Spirit, in the art of self-knowledge, in the colloquy between the Divine Lord Sri Krishna and the Prince Arjuna, stands the second chapter, entitled The Philosophy of Discrimination. That chapter is interesting because it's very similar to what my grandfather taught me growing up. And I seem to have forgotten when I joined the military, wanting to be a part of that tribe and that group of people. But I should have just kept following my own thing instead of tagging along with others. And that led me astray. And I can't blame the idiots that I was stationed with. I blame myself. Can't blame the ignorant when you know better. I guess that's the folly of youth. I'm going to read this third chapter, and then I'll come back in a couple days. Karma Yoga, Chapter 3, The Path of Action. Arjun questioned, "My lord, if wisdom is above action, why dost thou advise me to engage in this terrible fight? Thy language perplexes me and confuses my reason. Therefore, tell me the only way by which I may without doubt secure my spiritual welfare." Lord Sri Krishna replied, "In this world, as I have said, there is a twofold path, O sinless one. There is the path of wisdom for those who meditate and the path of action for those who work. No man can attain freedom from activity by refraining from action, nor can he reach perfection by merely refusing to act. He cannot, even for a moment, remain really inactive, for the qualities of nature will compel him to act whether he will or no. He who remains motionless, refusing to act, but all the while brooding over sensuous objects, that deluded soul is simply a hypocrite. O Arjun, all honor to him who controls his senses, for he is therefore beginning to practice karma yoga, the path of right action, keeping himself always unattached." Spiderweb. "Do thy duty as prescribed for action For action for duty's sake is superior to inaction. Even the maintenance of the body would be impossible if a man remained inactive. In this world, people are fettered by action, unless it is performed as a sacrifice. Therefore, O Arjun, let thy acts be done without attachment, as sacrifice only. In the beginning, when God created all beings by the sacrifice of himself, he said unto them, through sacrifice you can procreate, and it shall satisfy all your desires. Worship the powers of nature thereby, and let them nourish you in return. Thus, supporting each other, you shall attain your highest welfare. For fed on sacrifice, nature will give you the enjoyment you can desire, but he who enjoys what she gives without returning is indeed a robber. The sages who enjoy the food that remains after the sacrifice is made are free from all sin, but the selfish who spread their feast only for themselves feed on sin only. All creatures are the product of food. Food is the product of rain. Rain comes by sacrifice, and sacrifice is the noblest form of action. All action originates in the Supreme Spirit, which is imperishable, and in the sacrificial action, the all-pervading Spirit is consciously present. Thus, he who does not help the revolving wheel of sacrifice, but instead leads a sinful life, rejoicing in the gratification of senses, O Arjuna, he breathes in vain. On the other hand, the soul who meditates on the self is content to serve the self and rests satisfied within the self. There remains nothing more for him to accomplish. He has nothing to gain by the performance or non-performance of action. His welfare depends not on any contribution that an earthly creature can make. Therefore, do thy duty perfectly, without care for the results, for he who does his duty disinterestedly attains the supreme. King Janaka and others attain perfection through action alone. Even for the sake of enlightening the world, it is thy duty to act. For whatever a great man does, others imitate. People conform to the standard which he has set. There is nothing in this universe, O Arjun, that I am compelled to do, nor anything for me to attain. Yet I am persistently active. For were I not to act without ceasing, O Prince, people would be glad to do likewise. And if I were to refrain from action, the human race would be ruined. I should lead the world to chaos, and destruction would follow. As the ignorant act because of their fondness for action, so should the wise act without such attachment, fixing their eyes, O Arjun, only on the welfare of the world. But a wise man should not perturb the minds of the ignorant who are attached to action. Let him perform his own actions in the right spirit with concentration on me, thus inspiring all to do the same. Action is the product of the qualities inherent in nature. It is only the ignorant man who, misled by personal egotism, say, I am the doer. But he, O mighty one, who understands correctly the relations of the qualities to action, is not attached to the act, for he perceives that it is merely the action and the reaction of the qualities amongst themselves. Those who do not understand the qualities are interested in the act. Still, the wise man knows the truth should not disturb the mind of him who does not. Therefore, surrendering thy actions unto me, thy thoughts concentrated on the absolute, free from the selfishness and without anticipation of reward, with mind devoid of excitement, begin thou to fight. Those who always act in accordance with my precepts, firm in faith and without caviling, they too are freed from the bondage of action. But they who ridicule my word and do not keep it are ignorant, devoid of wisdom, and blind. They seek but their own destruction. Even the wise man acts in character with his nature. Indeed, all creatures act according to their natures. What is the use of compulsion then? The love and hate which are aroused by the objects of sense arise from nature. Do not yield to them. They only obstruct the path. It is better to do thine own duty, however lacking in merit, than to do that of another, even though efficiently. It is better to die doing one's own duty, for to do the duty of another is fraught with danger. Arjun asked, My lord, tell me what it is that drives a man to sin, even against his will, as if by compulsion. The Lord Sri Krishna, it is desire, it is aversion, born of passion. Desire consumes and corrupts everything. It is man's greatest enemy. As fire is shrouded in smoke, a mirror by dust, and a child by the womb, so is the universe enveloped in desire. It is the wise man's constant enemy. It tarnishes the face of wisdom. It is as insatiable as a flame of fire. It works through the senses, the mind, and the reason, and with their help destroys wisdom and confounds the soul. Therefore, O Arjun, first control thy senses, then slay desire, for it is full of sin, and it is a destroyer of knowledge and wisdom. It is said that the senses are powerful, but beyond the senses is the mind, and beyond the mind is the intellect, and beyond and greater than the intellect is he. Thus, O mighty in arms, knowing him to be beyond the intellect, and by his help subduing thy personal egotism, kill thine enemy, desire, extremely difficult though it be. Thus, in the holy book of the Bhagavad Gita, one of the Upanishads, in the science of the Supreme Spirit, in the art of self-knowledge, in the colloquy between the Divine Lord Sri Krishna and Prince Arjun, stands the third chapter entitled Karma Yoga, or the Path of Action. And the reason why I want to stop here is because the next chapter is the Path of Wisdom. But this one is what pretty much sums up my military career and my whistleblowing, if I were to be honest with that whistleblowing. I'm going to say red card because that's like, I red carded myself. I didn't blow the whistle. I red carded myself, which is like a step. And so it talks about following one's nature, and nature, I definitely understand, is what is nurtured as well and cultivated within oneself. I mean, that's the point of yoga, is to bring these things under the discipline to culture them. But I've always followed my own nature as far as, when I'm given a task, I've done it. I've never been really, even when I played team sports growing up, I was always the support guy. I was always the guy who made sure that the ball was given to the stars, the forwards. Or if I played soccer, so I always played halfback. Or if I played a wingman, I played the left because I was the only one that could kick with my left foot. And being young, that's kind of a talent, but I was never the star. Even when I was wrestling, wrestling is a team sport, but is really all about self-action, self-nature. I can have my teammate beat the shit out of me, but I'm not going to get anywhere unless I work my ass off. And I tell this story a lot. So my grandpa knows a man named Dan Gable. And Dan Gable was the first person to possibly have gotten a undefeated in the NCAAs in college way back in the day. And he's going into his last match, and he gets interviewed, and he's like, "Yeah, I got this. It's mine. I got it. I'm gonna win." He goes into it and he loses to a freshman his senior year, his last match. And he doesn't disappear and go away. He came back and learned from that. And the lesson that my grandpa taught me was that no matter what you do in life, you can be the best, but if you're not working at it, if you're not, striving to be the best at your craft, then someone else is going to come along and do it. Someone else is going to come along and slay the giant. And that's all they need to have as their claim to fame. And so it takes persistent action. And even when you do fall, even when the giant does fall, you can still get up and try again. And that's also why I like the story of David in the Bible. And if we're going to talk comparatively of religious wisdom, I'd say David and Solomon are two of my favorite characters in the Bible. And David slays a giant by focusing on God and doing what he believes is necessary. And, he becomes king. And whether or not these stories are real or not doesn't matter. Reality. They are reality. Whether they're material reality or not, these stories are still true. They still help us grow And my problem with the action of what's going on in the world is that I feel like everything that I've done has been, like I said earlier, taken advantage of or ignored, or I don't know, like the people who should be listening are not, or at least not telling me. And my allies, I haven't spoken to anyone in probably like 3 or 4 months. Maybe even longer than that, you know. And I get that I am not going to see the fruits of my service in this regard. It's been really made quite clear. But I'm not going to give up, because I have an even deeper reason now than my own personal salvation. I did my duty. No one can take that from me. I continue to do my duty. I continue to serve my greater self. I continue to serve the greater humanity. I continue to do these things because I was taught to do them. I was raised to do them. And it is only by doing these things that I feel at peace within myself. And it is only by doing all these things that I have come to peace within myself. I rest in my own personal supreme state. And I think that anyone can get there. If I can get there after all the shit that I've been through, if I can get there through my belief and view in something greater and then working towards it, then anyone can do it. I'm not a special person. I'm just a person who had a good upbringing. And I want people to recognize that that is a big key thing. We need to take care of our children. We need to provide a world for our children to grow up in that isn't this shithole that it is now. And these people that are in charge do not have discrimination, and they do not do right action. There is nothing that any of these people that are in charge that I've come across that are doing anything remotely righteous or right. It is all wrong. All of it. All the world's governments. All. The UN, the United States, Norway, Germany, all these places, Spain, all these people are fucking in charge. They're in charge because they want control, and they're not doing right action. They will fall. We are going to witness their destruction. And hopefully it doesn't destroy the rest of humanity in the fucking process. I hope you guys enjoyed this reading and a little bit of reflection that goes on behind it. And I hope that it helps someone out there do their own reflection. Thank you.